You ever get that feeling that you're just operating on a different wavelength? That sense of being stuck or slow, not because you don't get it, but because you refuse to just accept things the way they are? Well, I'm here to tell you that feeling isn't a flaw. It's actually a feature. It's your mind rejecting conventional thought. And in this explainer, we're going to decode the powerful operating system that's running behind the scenes. Let's get into it.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle that feeling of being an overthinker. Then we'll look at the cognitive science behind it all, what I call the System 2 override. After that, we'll walk through 5 practical laws for engineering truth, including a big one, the optimization paradox. And we'll wrap up by showing you why this way of thinking is your secret weapon.
All right, let's start with that heavy feeling, the so-called overthinker's burden. You know what I'm talking about.
I'm willing to bet this question hits home. If you're the kind of person who has to deconstruct every idea, who can't help but question every assumption, and you feel this friction when everyone else just nods and moves on, you are not alone. And that exhaustion isn't a sign of weakness. It's the signature of a powerful mind at work. It all boils down to 2 different ways of thinking. See, most of the world runs on the stuff on the left, reasoning by analogy. It's all about copying what's been done before, making small tweaks. It's safe, sure, but you're always trapped by the past. Your brain, though, it defaults to the column on the right, first principles thinking. You have this deep-seated need to break everything down to its most basic truths, its raw materials, before you're willing to build anything new.
So let's put a proper name to this, because it isn't just a personality quirk. We're talking about the fundamental architecture of your mind.
The psychologist Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for this idea. Our brains have 2 modes. System 1 is the autopilot. It's fast, it's instinctive, it's what you use to drive a familiar road. But then there's System 2. That's the manual control. It's slow, deliberate, logical, and it takes real, conscious effort to engage.
And right there, that's the absolute core of it. While most people cruise through life on the autopilot of System 1, your brain is constantly reaching for the gear shift. You're hitting the manual override, intentionally doubting your own intuition, because you're searching for what's actually true, not just what feels true. That feeling of being slow, that's just the sound of the engine when you're in manual mode.
Okay, so now we know the what and the why. So how do we actually put this to work? Let's get into 5 practical laws for engineering your thinking.
Law number 1 is simple, but it's tough. You have to actively reject the analogy trap. This means you stop solving problems by looking at how other people solved them. Instead, you have to start from scratch and look at what is physically possible. The classic example, of course, is Elon Musk with SpaceX. He didn't ask, hey, how much does a rocket cost? That's analogy. No, he asked, what are rockets made of? And then he priced out the raw aluminum, copper, and steel on the commodities market. Turns out, the actual cost of the stuff was a tiny fraction of the market price for a rocket. He wasn't buying a rocket, he was buying metal. He reasoned from physics, not from history. All right, on to the second law. Now this one is critical, especially today, in a world that's being reshaped by artificial intelligence. And the law is this: prioritize understanding over optimization. Look, AI is an absolute master at optimizing systems. It can find the most efficient route for every car in a city. But it can't ask the bigger question, should our cities be built around cars at all? That's your job. Your real advantage isn't being a better optimizer than a machine. It's understanding the cause behind the patterns and questioning if the whole system even makes sense.
The third law, this one's about changing your perspective. It's about learning to zoom out and see the whole machine, not just the gears in front of you.
Which leads us to Law 3, think like an architect, not a mechanic. A mechanic is brilliant at fixing a part, at tuning an engine for a little more efficiency. But an architect designs the whole building. They understand how the plumbing affects the electrical, how the foundation affects the roof. They know that if you just maximize one thing, like efficiency, you might completely destroy something else, like resilience. A first principles thinker is always the architect.
Okay, law number 4, this one is all about unlearning. It's about breaking a habit that's been drilled into pretty much all of us since we were kids. You know exactly what I'm talking about. We're all born curious, but we're taught to stop asking why and just accept because that's the way it is. So, to get back to your natural state, you have to enforce Law 4, which is to ask why relentlessly. And this is a real technique. You start with the first why. This just gets you past the surface level assumption. Then, whatever the answer is, you hit them again. But why?
Now you're forcing them past the canned, easy response.
The third why goes even deeper. And why is that true? At this point, you're no longer accepting claims, you're demanding evidence.
With the fourth question, you're getting close. What is the fundamental reason for that? Now you're digging for the root cause, not just the symptoms.
And you ask it again, maybe one last time, until you hit bedrock. You hit a fundamental law of physics, or a core principle of human nature, something that simply can't be broken down any further. That's the goal. That's your foundation. And that brings us to the fifth and final law. This one isn't about technique. It's about biology. It's about acknowledging the physical reality of this process. Law number 5 is embrace the metabolic cost. This way of thinking is supposed to feel hard. Your brain burns a massive amount of your body's energy, and firing up System 2 requires way more fuel than just coasting on System 1. So that mental friction, that strain you feel, that isn't a sign we're doing something wrong. It's biological proof that you're doing the real, difficult work of breaking out of the autopilot trap.
So let's pull all this together. Let's reframe this entire cognitive style not as a burden, but as what it truly is, a powerful strategic advantage.
That compulsion you feel to take everything apart, to question every assumption, to understand things from the ground up, that's not overthinking. It is your strategic moat. In a world that is drowning in shallow automation and copy-paste thinking, the person who can reason from first principles possesses the rarest and, frankly, the most valuable skill there is.
So here's the final takeaway. Don't fight the way your brain is wired. Embrace it. Lean into it. The world has plenty of optimizers, plenty of mechanics who can tweak what's already there. Your job is different. Your ability to see the whole system, to deconstruct it to its core, and to imagine something entirely new from scratch, that's what makes you an architect. And architects are the ones who build the future.